Hi, my name is Ciacca, and welcome to another episode of Understanding a Jazz Masterwork in under 15 minutes. Today we will be talking about Bud Powell's Masterwork, Glass Enclosure, a piece that was recorded in 1953 on The Amazing Bud Powell, Volume 2. Bud Powell, according to Bill Evans, is probably the most influential jazz piano player of the bebop era. Bud Powell was born in 1924 in New York City and died in New York City in 1966. His father was an amateur piano player and he had two brothers. The older brother, William, played trumpet and the younger brother, Richie, also played piano. Bud was a piano prodigy. He studied classical music and at the same time he was totally immersed into the big band era of the 30s. His first breakthrough came through one of Duke Ellington's alumni, namely Cootie Williams, who took him under his wing and gave him his first record opportunity. In 1944 he was 20 years old when he started to play with Cootie Williams Orchestra and made his first record. And his famous recording of Western Blues in duo with Cootie Williams and Round Midnight, actually before Thelonious Monk himself. Bud grows up with a big idol, which is the legendary Art Tatum. And we can hear in Bud's piano style some of the elements of Art Tatum. He likes to play fast tempos, the fast runs on over the whole tone scale. Another great influence on Bud was Thelonious Monk, who was a dear friend of his, and Monk kind of took him under his wing and I'm sure influenced him a lot when it comes to composition. We can divide the 20 years of Bud Powell activity from 1944 to 1966 in about three periods. We have the first period in 1944-1948, we call them the early years, where we can hear him developing his style. A lot of jazz critics say that Bud was Charlie Parker on piano. Well, I slightly disagree with that because Bud Powell was only 4 years younger than Charlie Parker. So I will say they both developed that new idiom along with Dizzy Gillespie, Fats Navarro. They're all pretty much the same age. The second period was the explosion of Bud Powell's talent, both as a phenomenal improviser and fantastic composer. His creativity was captured by a series of recordings by Alfred Lion for Blue Note and from Norman Granz with Verve under the description of The Amazing Bud Powell, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. Volume 1 is where we find the first quintet under his name with a young Sonny Rollins, phenomenal Fats Navarro, and Roy Haynes and Curly Russell. These are when the first masterworks come to be, like Bouncing with Bud, Hallucination, like Un Poco Loco. In the early 50s, Bud Powell is full steam ahead with his small groups, as a special guest with a number of phenomenal beboppers like Dexter Gordon, like J.J. Johnson, like Charlie Parker, like Dizzy Gillespie. His compositions, they're one masterwork after another. Celia, dedicated to his daughter. Oblivion, I'll Keep Loving You. Tempus Fugit, Dance of Infidels, is a long stream of fantastic tunes and very well crafted and very well organized musically. The third period of Bud Powell's career is the period between 1959 and 1963 where Bud moves to Paris. Bud Powell in Paris is a star, and alongside some other famous American expatriates such as Johnny Griffin, Kenny Clarke, Clark Terry, Barney Whelan, Don Byas, he produced some of the most astonishing jazz records of the 60s. He travels all over Europe, especially in Germany, where his trio is performing with Don Byas and Coleman Hawkins as special guests. In 1963, Bud returns to New York and his health issues are worsening. His playing is not at level of 15 years before. Nevertheless, he is still the magnificent piano player, but his health deteriorates and he passed away in 1966. The piece I want to talk today, as we said before, is Glass Enclosure. I reached out to some of the great Bud Powell scholars, the greatest one, of course, Barry Harris, but also the great Michael Weiss and fantastic Robert Nissim, to confront different transcription of this song. I made one myself, but I had to confront mine with other transcriptions to make sure that the notes are as accurate as possible. Let's break down how the title of the song came to be. There are several hypotheses. One is that the manager of Birdland, when Bud was playing at Birdland in 1953, when this song was recorded, would seclude him in his apartment because he wanted to make sure that Bud didn't get in trouble. I'm not totally convinced about this description, but anyway, it's out there. I reached out to my dear friend John Powell, the only son of Bud Powell, since Celia, the first daughter, passed away about 10 years ago. Here's John's idea of where that title comes from.
Hi there. This is Earl John Powell, and my dad was Bud Powell. My friend Antonio Ciacca asked me to speak about Glass Enclosure, and as told to me by my mother, Buttercup Powell, and my godmother, Nellie Monk, it told me that tune was written somewhere between the 40s or early 50s, and during his hospitalization, the doctor asked him, who are you? He says, I'm a composer. I've written hundreds of tunes. So the doctor said that he was suffering from delusions of grandeur. So while he was convalescing in Willow Grove on his mother's porch, he got inspired by the sunlight hitting the windows in such a way that it refracted light. And from that pain and suffering, he was inspired to push through to write Glass Enclosure. I hope you enjoy it.
So, Glass Enclosure. This is a very, very peculiar composition because it doesn't have the typical structure of a jazz tune. A nice, catching tune with a chord progression, open for solos, with a representation of the same melodic material of the beginning. This composition is more, to me, a little rhapsody because we have at least 5 different ideas that are slightly connected. What sets this piece apart from the more canonic song form writing of the 40s and 50s is its sonic wall. The composer has already his own vocabulary and a complete command of the form. The bitonal sonority, the harmonic ambiguity, the dramatic use of fermatas, which by the way doesn't disrupt the flow of the piece, are tools of a consummate classical composer. The piece does not include a section open for solos. This defies one of the basic purposes of a jazz composition, which is a vehicle for a great soloist. We know Bud studied classical music in his teens before concentrating on jazz. His love of classical music is particularly evident in this composition. One of his compositions is entitled I Am in the Mood for a Classic. Bud went on to record C.P.E. Bach Solfeggetto in C minor and Chopin Prelude in C minor opus 20. If we look at the score of Chopin's Prelude, we can't avoid noticing the similarity with the opening section of Glass Enclosure. We find a similar pianistic gesture, triads on the right hand and octaves on the left hand. We will never know if this is the piece that inspired Bud to compose Glass Enclosure. Nevertheless, I find the similarity very compelling. The first section of the piece is 14 bars long. The first bar functions as a springboard for the following 13 bars, where we find the main melodic and harmonic features of the entire piece. The initial bar is a sort of mini intro, basically is a 2-5-1 to G minor. In this particular section of the piece, we find 2 main ideas articulated in a call and response. The first idea is an ascending melody contained within a minor sixth, D to B flat above middle C, played by the 2 hands an octave apart, followed by an homorhythmic answer, with the right hand playing a major triad and the left hand playing octaves in contrary motion. The result of this gesture is an alternation of major triads against very dissonant bass notes. The triads versus octaves ideas is juxtaposed with different gestures over the development of the section. Dotted 8 notes, triplets. One peculiar feature of the entire piece is the cross-bar phrasing. In other words, the phrases are not contained within the bar, but they start on beat 2 of one bar and end on beat 1 of the following bar, crossing the bars. The climax of these alternating sonorities is a march type of melody that ends with a triadic initial idea. The call and response inner structure of the piece has a very clear logic. The call is always melodic and the answer is always harmonic. The dichotomy melody-harmony is the signature idea of the piece. Harmonically, the section stays around the tonal area of G minor. Towards the ending of the section, we have a disguised cadence to the flat 6 of the tonal center, the note E flat, before the ending on an F sharp triad over G that we can define as a G minor major 7 sharp 5. The second section is 26 bars long. The first 4 bars are a sort of intro. The melodic material of this particular section stems out of ideas contained in the previous section, section A. The opening contrary motion chromatic lines are an elaboration of the contrary motion idea, triads versus octaves, already present in the section A. The same origin can be stated for the double octave 8-note triplets. The following 22 bars features the call and response microstructure, as well as the melodic harmonic dichotomy. The new material of this section is a second thematic idea, which consists of a descending sequence over a series of major 7 chords. The overall structure of this second section consists of 4 bars intro, 6 bars call and response, 4 bars descending broken arpeggio, 6 bars call and response, 4 bars descending broken arpeggio, and 2 final bars of call and response. 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2. Interestingly, the even number of bars contrasts with the cross-bar phrasing, creating an overall feeling of a constant shifting of the sense of symmetry. In other words, within a pretty conventional structural framework, Powell manages to create an original piece by simply avoiding starting the phrases where everyone will expect them. The third section is the most lyrical of the piece. Although it's very short, only 3 bars, it conveys a sense of rest. The sense of repose is short-lived though. Halfway through the third and last bar of the section, the double triplets give us a sense of preparation for the best part of the piece. Harmonically, the lyrical line is played over a simple E flat major 7, G flat major 7, and E major 7 descending progression. The same harmony we found in the second thematic idea of the section B. The sudden change of texture and the sonic ingenuity creates a sense of continuity between sections that will be otherwise perceived as disconnected. The fourth section is 15 bars long and has a character of a march. The sonority resembles the gospel sounds of the African American religious music. The ever-present contrary motion gesture is once again the main idea of the section. The melody is an amazing display of harmonic knowledge. Powell builds the tension by using one single note, the B flat above middle C, as a pivot note and keeps reharmonizing it. This constant reharmonization of a pivot note happens while a complete independent bass line moves in a contrary motion homorhythmically. The section has no intro and has a loose ABA form, where in the last A, Powell restates the first 4 bars before the ending on a fermata. The fermata is used structurally in every section of the piece and adds a sense of unpredictability to the performance. Obviously, this is a piece that can only be performed with a working ensemble with strong interplay. George Duvivier on bass bows his way through the exact same notes as Bud's left hand, where in other sections of the piece, the bass only answers to the piano. The last section is 8 bars long and has a declamatory dramatic character. The opening gestures derives from material already stated in previous sections, such as the chromatic contrary motion gesture in sections A and B. This time, the idea is developed. In fact, the lines are not single melodies anymore, but harmonized. The overall character of the sections conveys a sense of transitions that prepares for the recapitulation, almost as in a sonata form. This section starts with a single note B flat and culminates with the A flat major 7 chord. We find this chord in the first section as part of a disguised cadence. The polarity between G minor and E flat major is the harmonic focus that underlines the entire piece. At this point, as in a sonata form, we have the recapitulation. As a matter of fact, Bud replays the entire A section, and that concludes this masterpiece.